Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with Morsels of a Thought number 1652. I am reading a national bestseller today, Lunar Legacy, DNA of Success by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman. We are reading Morsels of a Thought of Wisdom. Hopefully, that we learn the right things to do for our lives, and knowing the right thing to do for our lives, having the form of wisdom, taking the action creates virtue. So, we're bringing more virtue into the world with my Morsels of a Thought. So, we are on page 66. Chris digested every one of Ben's words and the importance of the message he was sharing. Chris had a daughter, Vivi, whose best friend was adopted from a foreign country, so he already knew about some of these challenges. He was intrigued by Jan and her efforts to make a fresh start, dedicating herself to something so challenging and so remote. He thought of how difficult it must be to access construction workers and other support systems to make these projects happen on the other side of the world. Chris had taken a different route with his passion. He jumped into the world of real estate investment and passed on his knowledge and expertise by teaching others how to make money. We're talking about Chris Noggle here. He observed how the wealthy operate differently with their funds and how their skills could help those with less investment expertise. What set Chris aside from so many other successful people was that he was not only financially motivated, but he also had a big heart and wanted to contribute to the world being a better place. He was very generous and giving and believed in sharing his wealth and knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn. However, to Ben, Chris was simply his best friend since the second grade. He was the kid he traded his lunch with whenever his mom packed him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Ben was pleasantly surprised that Jan's story resonated so deeply with Chris. Please send me her info. I want to help, Chris announced. Zig Ziglar said it best. You will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. I really believe those words. You'll find true happiness and wealth by practicing generosity and helping others. Ben explained to Chris that he hadn't told him about Jan to get a donation, but he was just happy to be connecting people. As they continued up the trail, they talked about how they used to get to school. The boys had walked to school most days once they hit junior high. The bus was usually running late, so one day they started walking together and never took the bus again. It was a much nicer start to the day. They got to chat and laugh while getting fresh air and exercise. They were forced to change their route because every morning they ran the gauntlet by passing the house where Rex, the meanest dog in the neighborhood, lived. Wait, was Rex really the reason we took that route? Chris questioned. Yeah, I got bit by him one summer, remember? There's no way I was going down Green Street after that. We had to go down Maple instead. You sure it wasn't to, quote, accidentally, end quote, bump into Emma Johnson on the way? We used to leave 10 minutes early once we found out what time she walked to school, Chris jabbed at him. First of all, I wanted to see Lily Simpkins. It just so happened that Emma used to walk with her, Ben corrected. And second of all, Ben continued, I was really just trying to avoid that dog. I would have flown a plane to school if it meant not crossing paths with Rex. Why are we talking about my biggest fears anyway? Biggest fears? Dangerous dogs or school crushes? They chuckled as they continued along the trail. We're lucky that's all we had to worry about on our way to school, Ben declared. They thought of the girls in Tanzania, risking their lives just to get an education. You said it, brother, Chris added. They walked in silence for a short while, contemplating the action they could take. Ben was hands on and proactive, a take action kind of guy. Chris, on the other hand, was generous through financial donations to causes close to his heart. He had always been good at making money, but he was even better at helping people, something he and Ben had in common, and one of the reasons they had remained so close these years. My mom saved every penny to buy what she needed, but she still lent me money when I wanted to start a business. She didn't even question it. She just gave me the money and told me to chase my dreams, Chris explained. We didn't have a lot of growing up, but we didn't have a lot growing up, but she did her best and always provided. I found out later that she had to borrow $70,000 against the house to help me start my snowboarding business. Without her generous heart, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's because of her that I help people whenever I can. She helped me learn the value of money, not just what it's worth, but the value it brings to people whose lives you can change forever. Now, I give without hesitation because when you give, you get something so much greater in return. Chris shared that he was already instilling in his own daughter his approach to what he called, quote, financial freedom and happiness, end quote, through generosity and philanthropy. People forget it's not just about having money and buying things. Money is also a tool, a means to help people to give generously without conditions. Money changes lives, Chris explained as Ben listened attentively. Chris had a treasure trove of information to share. We are reading Morsels of a Thought of Wisdom from DNA of Success, Lunar Legacy by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman. We are trying to learn the right thing to do for ourselves because by doing the right things, we're creating virtue. Okay, so Chris stated, I've learned throughout my life that nothing is more important than giving. I remind my daughter of that every week. Chris stated. Giving was the legacy he wanted to leave and to pass on his teachings to his daughter. Ben thought about how he could apply the same lessons and guidance to his daughter. When they reached the summit of the mountain, Ben informed Chris that he would include his legacy in the Lunar Legacy mission. Chris gave Ben a warm hug of thanks and appreciation. They were thankful that the sun was starting to set, so the heat would finally relent. They set up camp and boiled water to make dinner. Ben pulled out a tiny bottle of hot sauce to add some flavor to their food, and they ate in silence, physically drained from the hike and mentally tired by their in depth conversation about life and legacy. Although it would have normally been too early for bed, when they were camping, they lived by the sun's rules and went to sleep once the sun went down. At sunrise, they were up with the sun, refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to start their descent. It was perhaps the first time in their camping lives that they looked forward to getting back to the real world. We're going to help a lot of people together, Chris, Ben announced as they started off down the mountain side by side. Chapter 14. Following their camping trip, Chris hit the ground running. He connected with Jan and they moved forward together. Ben focused on his mission to keep up momentum since his latest round of interviews. He wanted to contact everyone to share details about when they were launching and maintain their excitement. He had written a list of fun facts about the launch, the science behind the technology, and his progress regarding the upload of their information. The week after the camping trip, Ben was bursting with ideas. He was eager to speak to more interviewers and to talk more about space exploration and lunar legacy. He loved explaining the science in a simplistic fashion so people could grasp the depth of the information quickly and easily. He broke the information down into bite-sized chunks and used his online channels to gain more followers. People were becoming more interested and more involved. Ben received multiple comments every day with fascinating questions and ideas being shared and discussed. He met the He met the demand by hosting an episode solely dedicated to the viewer's questions and insights. Conversations quickly evolved from space travel and global preservation to black holes and time travel. Have you ever done time travel? This is Yin Yang asking a question. Have you ever done time travel? I feel as though sometimes we do have dreams of an alternate reality, and that would be what happens if something else didn't happen in your life beforehand. I wonder if that's the case. Hmm. Well, anyway, let's talk about the book. Lunar Legacy, DNA of Success, Chapter 14. By the following week, Ben had become so overwhelmed he began to feel lethargic and unfocused at a time when he needed complete concentration. Staring blankly at his laptop in his home office, he leaned back in his chair and ran his fingers through his hair. Running a few miles, eating a healthy breakfast, and responding to a few messages and emails had gotten him through the morning. By the afternoon, his motivation and focus had dissipated. "How are you feeling?" Destiny asked when she checked in. "I've hit a slump this week, that's all." Ben brushed it off. "You've been working so hard and you're ahead of schedule, aren't you? Start fresh tomorrow. Let's spend some time together today," Destiny suggested helpfully. They climbed into the car, with Destiny insisting on driving. Ben didn't even ask where they were going. He was too relaxed to care and enjoyed not having to think or plan anything for a change. During the drive, they chatted and joked, worrying about nothing at all. Ben's work obligations and all his stress drifted out the open window as the warm breeze circulated through the car. Pulling into the parking lot, Ben knew straight away where Destiny had brought him. It was a unique restaurant that they had visited on their first date. They stepped inside and sat at a table to play an interactive trivia game that was set up for the patrons. An interactive trivia game that was set up for the patrons. Questions were displayed on tablets at each table, and the diners selected answers on the screen. Through playing this game, Ben discovered Destiny's love and knowledge of British literature, while Destiny learned that Ben was well versed in political science. Together, they were a formidable team. Between them, they covered all the general knowledge bases, and, win or lose, they had fun. They ordered chips and salsa as they contemplated their answers while the timer counted down in the corner of the screen. In the early rounds, Destiny answered three questions in a row so quickly that Ben didn't even have a chance to guess. Not that his answers would have been right. Destiny was dominating. She smirked and nodded in his direction when a question about movies popped up. Destiny might have been able to quote any movie she watched, but general film knowledge was definitely his area of expertise. After the quiz, they walked outside to the patio, and Destiny asked Ben about what was blocking his creativity. "I feel like the answers are there, but I can't see them. It's like I'm blindfolded or something. Other people know them, but I take longer to find a solution," Ben explained. "The beauty of creativity is that it should never be rushed. There's magic in taking time over getting it right. More ideas are sparked along the way when you let the process breathe," she encouraged. "You'll figure it out. Online marketing and strategies were never your strength, but you learned how to crack it. You approach creativity the same way you approach and thrive in science, and it's working." Destiny knew Ben would respond positively to a scientific point of view. Ben liked the idea of forming a strategy using numbers to gauge interest in his content. Treating each encounter and expertise as a hypothesis to be tested made Ben feel better about putting himself out there online for the world to see. He felt inspired to try new ways of engaging the public to educate and encourage deeper thought about the lunar legacy. The next morning, Ben accepted an offer to be interviewed by a national radio station. He intended to ask others about their legacy and explain it to the listeners. He would also start attending seminars and listen to podcasts and TED Talks to find out what messages people believed and were excuse me, he would also start attending seminars and listen to podcasts and TED Talks to find out what messages people believed were important to share. We are reading Lunar Legacy, DNA of Success by Greg S. Reid and Ben Haldeman. I am trying to learn the right things to do in life. We have a form of wisdom when we know the right thing to do, and then when we actually do them, we create virtue. So we're doing more virtue with morsels of thought. Okay. Ben didn't have to wait long for his next source of information when Annette Cruz Padilla called into the radio show to share her story. Good morning, Annette Cruz Padilla. Ben kept her on the line for almost an hour as he learned more about her journey that navigated the worlds of law enforcement, health, and philanthropy. Born into a life of poverty, Annette's parents emigrated from Mexico and settled in an African American neighborhood in California. As she navigated a new world and struggled to learn a new language, the other kids in the neighborhood protected her from being beaten up and bullied. The quote, Ebony Queens, end quote, taught her about soul and divinity, a community that lifted her up and protected her. Seeing women of color overcome difficult circumstances while creating better lives for themselves was truly inspiring for her throughout her childhood. Annette had a lighter complexion than her darker skinned family, and in her African American neighborhood, she was often mistaken for white. Many people didn't realize she was Latina and treated her differently when they found out her heritage. As a result of her experiences, Annette became a strong voice in the community for social injustice and discrimination. At only 23 years old, she joined the police academy and, incredibly, she served her community for 36 years, spending 30 of those years as a senior deputy sheriff with the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. Annette is a retired San Francisco Sheriff's hostage negotiator. Volunteering also became a huge part of Annette's life, and she served several organizations. She met her husband at the YMCA, and 43 years later, they were still together. I want to say, Annette has told me that when she and her husband met, they both blushed. Isn't that nice? Like Annette, back to the book. He was also retired from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. Annette promoted and advocated for girls going into STEM, STEM, with Girl Scouts of America. She was also a mentor to many youths in Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America, where her, quote, little sister became the only one in her family to get out of poverty and be gainfully employed, all while being hard of hearing and having to use sign language to communicate. Before she was even a young adult, Annette had touched and changed so many lives while fulfilling so many accomplishments. She had connected with so many people in her life that she wanted everyone to have a chance to tell their stories. Now that she's retired, Annette spends her time as an ombudsperson with the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, and she advocates for more women to be appointed into leadership positions in law enforcement. Throughout her life, she has seen the differences women can make in troubled areas and the part they can play to resolve systemic issues. The women in her neighborhood always came together to make life better for everyone in the community. Annette continues to make an impact state and nationwide as she grows into her entrepreneurial endeavors with an eye to philanthropic projects with the most impact, i.e., ending illiteracy, poverty, discrimination, and gang violence, and promoting healthy, financially solvent women in our communities. Annette has told me that she also helps Indigenous people learn to read English. The sisterhood in her community, back to the book, pushed her to become the first and only college graduate in her nuclear family and helped her apply for college and jobs. This compelled Annette to really show the world what a Latina could do. Although her path was far from easy, her mindset was created through struggle and determination toward a life of abundance and happiness. You wouldn't believe it by looking at me now, but I had bariatric surgery a couple years ago, Annette proudly told Ben. I survived cancer and decided to take my health into my own hands with the kickstart of surgery. COVID happened, and my surgeon explained the correlation of high BMI with needing to be ventilated when patients got sick, regardless of their ages. Wow, I hadn't thought of that correlation. I'm sure there are additional comorbidities that complicate the illness as well, Ben thought out loud. I chose to live, so I got the gastric sleeve, but the journey did not end there. I had to take ownership over what I put into my body. Decades of excuses piled up, but I changed my mindset. It went from the obesity mindset to the abundance mindset. I have maintained my weight loss, and I'm encouraging other women to seek the help they need for their health. Bulimia and anorexia are part of my past, but so was obesity, and I had to overcome them all to live. Women put so much of our self worth on appearances, but I want to change the narrative to focus on health and abundance. What helps you change that focus? Ben questioned. Making big life changes to become a new person is easier said than done. You are responsible for your mindset, actions, and being part of the solution. In order to have clarity on where your blind spots are, it takes a coach to get there, not a therapist, but a coach to help get through space and time. You have to act and commit to it. It isn't your thoughts, but your decisions that you must act upon. Everything flows from your health, mindset, and decisions. Annette explained her philosophy on help. Poops, excuse me. Annette, expl- Annette explained her philosophy on health and the research she had conducted on her own. Becoming a certified essential oil specialist had saved her when she had PTSD from her career as a peace officer, and it helped her daughter with, with fibromyalgia. Educating herself and finding ways to improve her health and her situation had changed Annette's life, saved her from poverty, and helped her explore more ways to overcome her past. As a self proclaimed student of life, she was thirstier than ever for more knowledge and finding more people to help. Well, Annette, how would you sum up your legacy for our audience today? Ben inquired. He was sure the answer would be intriguing. My legacy for life, face it and deal with it. I've talked about my role as a life coach and the changes we can make in our lives, but we cannot escape reality and we can't do it alone. Education can help us make better choices in our lives, but we need each other for support, love, and encouragement. Well said. Ben let her words linger in the air, words he would mull over for some time. That's wonderful. Annette has told me many things, and I have this is somebody who comes on Facebook and watches this show, and oh, it's good to see you, Annette. And she has actually rescued me from a certain point of avoidance that could have turned me into a homeless person. It rescued me from one aspect of poverty. So, Annette, I owe it to you that I am still housed and still happy, and I have my company, my four cats, my um, they are my emotional support animals. So, Annette, I thank you very, very, very much from the bottom of my heart, the bottomest part of my heart, wherever that is. Okay. All right. So it was great to see you all. And I hope you are all well today. I tried to inspire you all to have a great day. And okay, old Kinderhook.